Hello everyone! Today I'm going to be talking about the history of books. Not history is detailed or analyzed within the pages of books, but the history of books as objects, and how particular books have come into being, been dispersed, and moved through time and space affecting the people who encounter them. The study of the history of books seeks to gain an understanding of the impact books have made on society by reconstructing the life stories of books, stories that are stitched together piece by piece by studying the people, places, and events that have made a book what it is today. Beginning with Gutenberg's invention of the movable type printing press and extending to the present day, the history of books is a field with an incredibly large scope, overlapping with other fields such as history, sociology, and linguistics. Though the history of books seems an incredibly broad field of study, its ultimate goal is, as Robert Darnton writes in his article, What is the History of Books?, to gain a larger understanding of how printing has shaped our attempts to make sense of the human condition. As English scholars adept in the art of analyzing text, we often focus so intently upon the meaning of a book's contents that we forget about the book itself, the physical vessel for the sacred text. This becomes especially difficult in today's world when we can do all of our reading from a PDF on a laptop or from a Kindle. Book historians study books as physical objects that have shaped and been shaped by what they've encountered over time. And one way in which they do this is by creating analytical bibliographies, which are examinations of the physical features of textual artifacts. Paper, ink, and damage are all elements that analytical bibliographers take into account. Analytical bibliographies are just one way in which those who study the history of books attempt to fill in a book's communication circuit. The communication circuit is a device developed by book historians to break down the vast expanse of a book's past. Each historian will typically take on only one part of the circuit for a book. In attempting to fill in the communication circuit, book historians will look at the scenes and actors that have formed a book's past. Let's take a look at Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin and how the political and legal sanctions influenced the author while the literary phenomenon was still in the making. Before the passage of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, Stowe had been contributing domestic sketches and stories to a moderate anti-slavery newspaper, but not long after the Act's passage, she wrote to her publisher saying, "I am at present occupied upon a story which will be much longer than one I have ever written. I feel the time has come when even a woman or child who can speak a word for freedom and humanity is bound to speak." The passage of the Fugitive Slave Act is therefore an example of elements in the creation of a book that book historians would study and fit into the communication circuit. Authors, however, are not the only actors in the history of books. Publishers, printers, shippers, booksellers, and readers are all crucial to the development of a book's history. Let's look at the influence of economic and social conjunctures on the publishing of Uncle Tom's Cabin. Stowe's sister, Catherine Beecher, had originally approached the Boston publisher Sampson & Company in hopes of securing a publishing contract, but the firm denied Stowe's offer, anxious that the publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin would jeopardize their business relationships in the South. John P. Jewett & Company eventually became Stowe's publisher, and from the book's publication on March 20, 1852, to the late spring of 1853, John P. Jewett & Company produced around 310,000 copies of Stowe's bestseller. Jewett contributed greatly to the immediate success of Uncle Tom's Cabin by spending many thousands of dollars in advertising, so many in fact that he made very little total profit off the book. Stowe's journey to publication reveals much about the history of Uncle Tom's Cabin and how a publisher can change a book's future, all things that book historians take into account when constructing a book's history. We've looked at just a few of the events and people that influenced Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. It is important to note, however, that book historians are not only concerned with books regarded as classics. On the contrary, because book historians are concerned with the physical book, they are primarily concerned with those books that have had the greatest physical presence in history, rather than those that have been held the highest place of esteem in the minds of critics but haven't been published widely. Book historians often play major roles in the rediscovering of authors who were widely read in their own time but forgotten by contemporaries. Just as the poets Sarah Piatt and Julia Ward Howe, who were for so long overlooked in favor of Dickinson, are just now being rediscovered, a fact which has altered our analyses of those poets in this very classroom. Books, like people, move from place to place, forming relationships with those they encounter, making their mark on the world. Book historians study the cumulative mark books have left on the world by piecing together their lives. As students and lovers of books, it is important that we not only recognize the importance of a book's textual meaning, but also the importance of a book's history, its creation, publication, distribution, those who cherished it, those who rejected it, and most importantly, those whose lives and perceptions were altered forever by it. Thank you for listening.